Well, here we are on day 3 of this 2-week intensive on registration and resonance. And what we want to do today is have you do an analysis, not of somebody else's recordings, but of your own and of your own singing. What I want you to do today is think about where you are most comfortable in your resonance. Now, this might be a tricky assignment to do on day 3, and it may be something you want to bookmark and save for later. Why do I say that? Because what we want to do in this assessment is start to understand where our strengths are. When we're dealing with laryngeal registration and particularly navigating resonance space and moving through registers, one of the challenges that we have is there's usually a register that's much more pronounced and predominant. And what you want to do before you tie those registers together, usually, is start to build strength in the registrations where you aren't as strong. So for a lot of, let's say, for example, pop or musical theater singers, their chest resonance will be very, very well developed. But usually the head dominant space is not, to put it mildly. Sometimes they never even accessed it. So in the next couple of weeks, for some of you in this 2-week intensive, just discovering those other registrations will be a huge win. But for others, they will understand them a little bit, but realize that there's going to be a huge disparity in terms of strength in one area of your voice or the other. And it's not surprising. It's not surprising simply because we live predominantly in one space or the other. And for most of us, we often live in chest voice because, to be honest, when we're using our voices most of the time, it's not in that modulated way. It's not in singing, it's in the articulated voice, which is speaking. So for many people, that spoken voice is much more chest dominated, even if you are, for example, a coloratura or a soprano. So you want to think about and assess where your strengths are in the registration. Make a note of that in your journal. And think about, as we're moving through this 2-week intensive, that you may want to spend a little extra time on the registration that you're having trouble finding or that is a little bit more weak for your voice. So don't be afraid to customize this and say, I'm going to go through the 2 weeks, I'm going to do all of that, but I'm going to come back and spend way more time building my chest voice, or conversely, building my head voice. Now, the challenge for most people is that blend and that mix in the middle, and we will get to that, I promise. But it's very hard to blend registrations when one or the other is just so dominant and very strong. So make an assessment today and figure out for you which part of your range is really just dominating. And of course, as always, if you have any challenges or if you want some feedback, feel free to post some vocalises. How will you do that? Well, if you're like, I don't know, how would I be able to assess that? You can do a very simple ah-based vocalise. So for example, take that exercise all the way through your range, bottom, all the way up to the top and back down. And try to explore the extremities as you're doing that, and you'll see there are places where you have breaks, there are places, for most people, there are places where you're much stronger and places where the sound gets less impactful, as it were. So of course, the thing that's going to navigate, that's going to really inform that is going to be your specific Fach. And it's why we end up having a Fach system in general, because different instruments, and we are all a different instrument, have different strengths and different ranges. So you want to assess your range, move through your entire range on that ah, and then figure out where your weak points are. Again, it will probably be either, for choral singers, by the way, frequently that chest registration is pretty weak. So it's not always the other way around. It might be the chest resonance or the head space. Now, keep in mind too that the blend for most people is the hardest. That mix in between, or the passaggi, we say in classical singing, or if you're a musical theater singer, we tend to call that the bridge or the break.